everyone, and welcome to today's chat. I'm Valerie Eichler-Lair, your host, and I'm really excited, even though it's spooky, I'm really excited to talk to a professional genealogist who was on a recent episode of The Dead Files. And in case you haven't seen the show yet, why not? But in case you haven't seen the show, what happens is they have Amy who talks to the paranormal spirits and gets a feel for what's happening in the house. Then you have Steve, who's a retired New York detective or police officer who does the background research on the family, or what actually not on the family, but on what's happened to whoever lived in the house or owned the house. And in this particular episode, it was based out of Layton, Utah. A father had bought a house for his daughter and grandson, only to find a short while later that the house was filled with paranormal activity, so much so that it affected the daughter and the grandson. They didn't even finish unpacking. They moved in with her dad. And I can't say I blame them, but anyway, I am so honored and privileged to have the professional genealogist that was featured on The Dead Files in Layton, Utah. Please say hi and welcome to Luana Darby. Hi, Luana.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
I see that you're not spooked and you weren't taken away by the paranormal.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with me about this. Anything that's on TV that has to do with genealogy, or anything that has to do with genealogy, we always like to chat about, right?
Right.
How did you, let me start right off the bat. How did you get contacted to do the show?
Well, I was called by the producers of the show, and they just left a message on my voicemail, and I returned it not knowing who it was. And I thought, ooh, somebody got a hold of me and they want me to do some research here in Utah. So I said, oh, why not?
Well, that's cool. Had they identified themselves when they left you a message or when they called?
Yeah, they did. They said they were the producers of The Dead Files, of which I knew nothing about. I don't have cable, so I had no idea what the show was about.
Okay. Well, let me interject here that The Dead Files is on the Travel Channel. So everyone check your local cable listings for the Travel Channel. And it normally airs on Saturday evening, I know, in my cable area at 9 p.m. Central Time. But be sure to check your cable listing. I noticed that because I notice all the things in a show usually, but I noticed there was snow. So when did they film this episode with you?
Well, it was December the 2nd, and it was very cold in Utah and had just snowed a couple days before.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it looked cold. I saw you all bundled up in your heavy winter coat and scarf. Yep. Being a professional genealogist and doing research, did you do any background research for the show itself?
Well, yeah, they gave me a little bit of information on the family, and they said, this is what we want to kind of work with. And they said, any additional research you want to do is just fine. And I decided I did want to do that. I didn't want to portray or give information out that I hadn't researched myself. So yeah, I did research all the facts that they had and added a few more little tiny details.
Good. I wouldn't expect anything else from you. It's like when I first saw it, I'm going, I know she fact checked everything and redid any of the research. What particular research did you do?
Well, they gave me some newspaper articles to look at and a couple of death certificates, and I kind of wanted to see, what was going on with that family. And I kind of went back in history a little bit as well to kind of figure out when the family had first come into the area, to kind of get that sense of, the family's history in that one particular area.
Mm-hmm. Now, was this for the family that had bought the house, or the family that owned the property or the house before they moved in or before they bought it?
It was before they bought it. I didn't do a whole lot of current research. I did a lot of research that came back in the 1800s and moved forward into the early 1900s.
Okay, good. I wanted to specify the difference because it was the father, get buying the house for his daughter and grandson. He just wanted them to have a nice home to live, but the research wasn't about their ancestors or their family. So
No.
this was all back way before them. Okay. Well, that's good to know that, you had done the research and fact checked and added some things that they may not have known themselves. I noticed that, and it really touched me when they had even asked, Steve had even asked, but I noticed it was in the barn, and this was out in Layton, Utah, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And I loved it when Steve asked you, well, why a barn? Why do you want to meet me here? And for those who haven't seen the show, can you give us some background on that?
Well, yeah, usually if you watch the show, he's meeting in a library, a nice warm office or building. And when they said, oh no, we're going to spruce this one up, we're going to do something different, we're going to meet in a barn. And I thought, oh, a nice warm barn. Well, it was about 10 degrees out that day, and we were in the center of the barn with the doors open. It was very, very cold to film this. And so it wasn't much above 10 degrees inside that barn itself during the entire filming.
Oh my gosh, freezing cold.
Yes.
They didn't even bring in heaters into the barn. They wanted true effect.
Well, actually, there were heaters, but they were back with the producers and the guys with the cameras. When they got up to us sitting at the table, there weren't. There was a lot of heat coming to us at all. So,
well, I know you shared with me, and I have to, share it now, because it's a good giggle that you said, "Oh my gosh, my nose was running constantly," but you couldn't see that if your nose was running in the show. You couldn't see that at all. That's one of the first things I looked for too.
well, it's funny because the producers kept telling me, do you realize your nose is running? I'm thinking, yes, it's 10 degrees out. Yes, my nose is running. So they kept handing me Kleenex throughout the filming. It was kind of comical, actually.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to mention it, because it's like you don't know what's going on, and it didn't show at all, but I could just imagine, shivering and so forth. So yeah, so that particular barn that you chose, how did you come about that particular one? Because it was really cool.
Actually, the producers came up with that barn. They met with somebody that had a barn that was a little bit older. That barn is used for events as well, but it's very close to the Morgan property, and so it has that same backdrop, the same area, and so we used a barn that would kind of give that sense of history.
Okay, cool. I didn't realize that. I thought that you had chosen that. So that's cool that it was close to. And this was about the Morgans who lived
Yes.
nearby. Okay. I'm gonna have you tell me, share with us the story. Now I know that there were a couple of photos that you had shown and a couple of death certificates, and oh my gosh, ooh, I loved the train stories that led to death that you said. So please share and tell us about your segment of the show.
Well, it's a little hard to remember. It's been almost 9 months, but I'll try to pull it up.
I'll clue you in since I just saw it a few days ago.
Okay. No, it started out with some of the things that happened. There was a couple of accidents, some early deaths in the family that happened. The gentleman who moved out there was everything okay when the family moved in first on the land. It was all right. But during the early 1900s, things started happening. There was a death of a child. There was train accidents, people dying one right after another. So there was like about 6 deaths that one followed the other. The ones that I think were the most kind of touching of your heart were the train accidents, especially the one of the young woman and her and I can't remember her name. You're going to try to help me
That's
remember
okay.
that one.
That's okay.
Her and her boyfriend had just gone to a dance, a big dance, and they were coming back. And there's a train track. It's not marked in any like crossing guard arms or anything like that. That was way back when you just had to look for the train. And what ended up happening, he saw a train and he thought, oh, I'm going to beat it. This is what the story says in the newspaper. And he started going faster and then went, oh, no, I'm not. And by the time he ended up stopping, he stopped right on the tracks. And the
Oh my God.
train hit them and carried them for a great long distance. And unfortunately, they
Yeah,
died upon impact.
I think you mentioned the show, and that might have been in the newspaper clipping at, for a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, it was quite a long ways because the train was going pretty fast. Back at that time, there was a lot of trains going through the area transporting things. And again, they didn't have the crossing guards or signal lights that we have now. You just had to watch for them and make sure you're not crossing the same time they are. His fateful mistake was that he thought, oh, I can beat it. He should have kept going. He probably would have beat it. But last minute, he slammed on the brakes and it wasn't, he kept skidding onto the tracks and it hit him square on. So that was kind of sad. And then after that, there were 2 more deaths. Mom and dad died. And there were people dying in 2 separate houses. They were close to each other, they're family members, but it was on the same land. And that's where I think they were going from for the show, was talking about how much this was happening all in the same part of the land. There were some other things that Steve brought out a little bit later that weren't actually in the part that I handed him, but and that kind of wrapped it up as to what was going on.
Right, there was a guy went after his wife with a gun, and then he attempted suicide, missed, and had to shoot again. So there was a lot of that, and that was right there on the property.
Yeah, everything seemed to be centered around the property. And I think that's what the producers were going for. They wanted to make sure that they had gotten all the facts straight. And that's why they contacted me, to make sure that what they had heard actually, did.
Right. Now, in the besides, I think there were 2 train stories. Besides those, the other deaths, you had mentioned that they weren't the one. I think it was the child that wasn't unusual. If I remember right, it was bronchitis or something like that. But then there was another death certificate that you did mention that there was something. And do you remember?
Actually, I don't remember that one, but
I want to say that it had something to do. I know it had something to do with the paranormal activity. Not that in the day, but that's what generated it. It's like she didn't let go. She was still in the present, so to speak. But I'm glad that you pointed those things out, because in genealogy research, we get so involved in looking at the death certificate when we first get them, and I know beginners do this, all the time. I did it myself, where you get the death certificate, and, oh, good, you got the name, you got the death date, and you got the place. But fill us in on what other things are on the death certificates.
Well, some of the things that are important to look at are the cause of death. A lot of times that will lead you to different records. If it was a cause of death that was suspicious, you'll have coroner reports. If it's something that's from some sort of a virus, a plague, the influenza, you'll know that perhaps that they didn't maybe get buried in the same way that they would if they would have had a singular death. If it's coming in large numbers of people, you might have just a mass grave on some of them. And that's what happened in the 1918 influenza epidemic. Many times they were buried in a big grave and all it said was Smith, 5 members, Donaldson, 2 members. And so that happens a lot. Also, you'll find on there a burial, and you'll find out where that is and when that was. And one of the most important things I always say is look for the informant. That tells you that that person might have known more, usually as a family member. If not, I've had some say someone's died at the veterans home in St. Louis. That was my great-great-grandfather. And that led me to other records. I thought, wait a minute, he died there. He has a state-generated certificate, but perhaps there's more at that hospital, and there was. So it's always good to look at those other items that are on the death certificate.
Mm-hmm. And then of course hopefully it might have the parents' names and
Yeah.
lead to where they were born, but be aware that it could say unknown.
Yes, quite
We know
often it
that.
does. Yes.
Yeah. But sometimes the birth date, and you use those for clues, right?
Yes, and the thing is, that's why you're looking at the name of the informant. Is it somebody unrelated to the family that's giving this birth and information for the birth date and the parents and where they were born, or is it just somebody who's in a hospital that just says unknown, or they said they were from Germany or whatever? It really does. It's a clue for you to know if that person has maybe some knowledge of that information. So
Right. I always try to, if it is, most of them don't, if you're lucky, some do,
yeah.
they'll state what that person informant's relationship is. But I'm always looking to see if there's a relationship. Who was this person, especially for my husband's great 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 grandfather, James Lair. Well, the informant was W.H. Lair. Well, how was he related? Obviously, yes, same last name. That's definitely not always the case, but, usually. So how was he related, and why was, because this was in 1910, that's my big giveaway here, is it was the same year of a census.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the census, okay, in one place, but he died in another. Well, why was he there? So to do the research for the backstory, the back part.
Also, the death certificates will lead to obituaries. You have the date of death, and that will give you that information. Again, it's just as accurate as the person who compiled it. If it was a cousin twice removed, you might not get some of the information as if it was a daughter or a spouse that was putting it together.
Right, right. Good points there, to share with us all, and reminders that if you have these a death certificate, go back and reread them. Do you tell people as well? Reread them.
I've reread some of the ones I did early on in my research, and that's when you go, how could I have missed that?
Yeah, it's like it was right there all the time. Mm-hmm.
It was, and again, it's like, death certificates, marriage certificates. Look at the name of the person who did it as well. Again, the informants on the death certificates, marriage certificates. Look at the pastor. It's those other little things that we tend to miss and go right past that may have clues.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all started, on the same foot. And, we were, like I said at the beginning, we were all excited, just like most of the beginners. You get the death certificate. Oh, good. The name, the death date, and the death place. Well, there's a whole lot. So always with any kind of record, I'm always rereading, especially when a new clue comes up. It's like, well, let me reread or look back at what I had already done. Oh, good, good. I love the your whole segment. It was very well done, very well put together. You were stellar.
Okay.
You were. I mean, it's like, gosh, did they give her a script and she had to memorize word for word? It's like you were a natural, on there.
Well, after about 25 takes, you kind of look like a zombie after a while. So.
No, you didn't look like a zombie. Oh my gosh! Then the rest of the show, when they explain what Amy had done, and if you don't mind, let me take a little bit of seconds to mention that. She had gone into each room. What they do is when she goes in, they remove personal items, photographs, trinkets, anything that would give her any kind of clue or from her reading the building. And she had done a drawing. She goes to a person that does a drawing of a sketch of one of her visions, and this one was in the boys, the grandson's room, and it was all these arms and big thick fingers. Not like my fingernails, but it's like, oh my gosh, because she hasn't talked to Steve. They don't talk to each other until they come together after he's met with you and maybe somebody else. Then they come together with the current family members to reveal what their research and things have found. So, so did you watch it? Have a chance to watch a recording with your family?
I did, and it was kind of creepy. I kind of went, "Wow, okay." Kind of spooky, huh?
It is. It is. What was your son's or your family's reaction when they saw your part?
My son said, "Mom, you must have run through that 25 times because you look like a zombie." I said, "Well, that's probably about where I was." After you say the same things over and over after a while, it kind of gets that way. But, it is what it is. I got the information across. So,
It was very well done. Like I said, you were stellar. I mean, you were on point. You presented it, in a very easy to understand way, very professional, and made it interesting. The stories, like that's why I had you mention about the train stories that, I went ahead and watched because here, I don't know if anywhere else, but here the episodes repeat 2 hours later.
mhm.
So I watched it then, even though I'm all spooked out. But then after that second time, I'm watching comedies or some sporting event because the first time I watched the show, I went to bed and I had nightmares all night long.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah, it's spooky.
yes.
It's spooky. Um, is there anything about the show, the segment that you were in that we didn't cover yet?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered most everything.
Oh, good. Um, so a last thought to share with anybody. Do you have any advice when people are watching this show? Advice on research or so forth that you'd like to share?
Well, for the show, it's always good to, if you're presented with information, to always double check things. It's habit with me when somebody hands it to me, whether it be a client or these producers, it's always good to double check and do your own research to make sure you come up with that same information. And then, take that information on your own little journey, and just see where it leads you and see if it comes to the same conclusions that the people producing the shows or the clients have.
Hmm. Or even your own family members. If someone's not, if someone's not a professional genealogist like you and I are, but a family member tells them, you know, believe half or listen to half or believe half and trash the rest until you prove it right or wrong. So
Well, and that's what I find. I find that there's usually a kernel of truth somewhere, but it's gotten so twisted and changed over time that it's not what it really is. And, those Indian stories you hear, or, you know, that you can always take that and see if that leads to where it is. But, there's always a small grain of truth there that you can work with, but use it as a clue.
right. And that's like, my grandma, and being that we're near grandparents' day, uh, it's I remember her saying, they were Pennsylvania Dutch or whatever.
Mhm.
Well, yes, your dad lived in Pennsylvania for 5 years when he was younger, and yes, he was German, but that's it.
Yep.
There's nothing else but that lived there for a real short time, and of course it was in between census years and so forth, so yes, you do have this German who lived in Pennsylvania. That's it. So, well, I want to thank you so much, Luana, for being with me and taking us on the journey for the Dead Files episode that you were on. It was awesome. And I'd like for you to come back and chat with me or with maybe the panel on a different TV show that you are involved with. Is there any way you can we've kind of put the word out that there's a season three? Yes.
Mhm. Yes, I can say that I was involved in it. I can't tell you any results because they've shut me down too, so I don't know exactly what's going on. But I was one of the staff genealogists for Relative Race season 3, and it's exciting. And you thought season 2 was good. You just wait till season 3 and cheer for the red team.
Okay, I got goosebumps. Yeah, congratulations being on there. I cannot wait, and I hope that you'll be able to come back and chat when the show comes on again and do
Oh,
that
I'd
with
love
me.
to. I'd
Oh,
love to.
good, good. Well, thanks so much, Luana. I love you dearly, and we'll see you soon. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them below or send us a quick email at info@theinDepthGenealogist.com. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. And until the next time, I wish you a fond farewell and go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye-bye.
Bye.